witness is on the witness stand. Mr. Goldman will continue his cross-examination. Mr. Stewart, state your name for the record, please. Dantes Stewart, you're still under oath. Please proceed. Now this is from the defense attorney, one of the defense attorneys. Mr. Stewart, just as a preliminary matter, how many times did you take your son on drug deals or gun deals? That one time. What's that? That one time. Just that one time? Yeah. Why did you do it that time? I was dropping him off. Alright, I want to go through your prior record, then move on to a new subject matter. The one matter that we discussed was you were charged with firing a shot at a police officer, and you denied that you shot at him. Mr. Witherall, that's the prosecution for those of you who don't know. Objection, Judge. As to what he was charged with, it's what he was convicted of or pled to. Mr. Goldman, ask a different question. Yeah, the date of the offense was July 7, 2004. You entered a guilty plea to the aggravated assault, correct? Correct. And you received 11 and a half to 23 months and 5 years probation after that. Is that correct? Correct. Moving on to the next one. You were then charged with an August 22nd, 2006 offense. Aggravated assault was a felony conviction. You agree with that, correct? I ain't sure. Was it? I ain't sure. In any event, you were prohibited as a former convicted person of possessing a firearm. You're aware of that? Yeah. Okay, so on August 22nd of 2006, which is about a year after you were sentenced, you were charged with possession of a prohibited firearm, and you entered a guilty plea to that. Did you not? Yeah. And also you had crack or cocaine on you that day. Yeah. You were sentenced in 2007, March 21st, 2007, to 1 to 2 years incarceration. Do you recall that? 1 or 2 years? Yes, that's what the court documents say. Yeah, I don't recall that. Okay. The next one. You violated probation on that case, and you were sentenced 3 to 6 years in prison for violation of probation. Do you remember that? Yeah. In the case that was the violation, do you remember being charged with cutting a woman about her face and punching her several times? No. Did you plead guilty to that offense? No. Well, that's the offense the court records indicate. Mr. Witherall, objection. I'm just seeing if it refreshes his recollection. You pled guilty to an assault in that case. Do you remember that? Never had a case like that. You never had a case like that? No. The next case would be July 24, 2012. You were charged with possession with intent to deliver crack cocaine and marijuana. Do you remember that case? I was incarcerated in 2012. Right. But the date of the offense was July 31st, 2011. On July 24, 2012, you were sentenced to 6 to 23 months in prison for a crack and marijuana offense. Do you remember that? Yeah. Then, if we go chronologically on dates of offenses, of what offenses you committed, what was the gentleman's name that was involved with the death of your brother? Andre? Andre Moore. Yeah, Andre Moore. Yeah. Okay, June 5, just this year, you were charged with murder of that gentleman, correct? Correct. And in that case, that stems from you chasing a guy in the street, shooting him when he fell down, and then shooting him when he was on the ground. Do I have that correct? Correct. You intend on pleading guilty to that one? Correct. That sentence is awaiting you, is it not? Right. In that case, you'd agree with me that when you're shooting at someone at the ground multiple times, that was an intentional killing by you, correct? Correct. And then, chronologically, we come up to October 14, 2017. Robbie Johnson is murdered. That's the case you testified about. In that case, he was shot about 4 or 5 times while he was in the car. Is that correct? I believe so. And in fact, more than 4 or 5 shots were fired. There's other bullet holes in the car. You know that because it's in the complaint that charged you, correct? Correct. That incident where you got this other gentleman to team up with you, That was an intentional killing. Was it not? Yeah. And in Pennsylvania, you're aware that an intentional killing, one who intends to kill another person, is first-degree murder. You know that, correct? Yeah. Correct? Yeah. You also know that first-degree murder is a mandatory life imprisonment. You know that, correct? Correct. But just last month, even after your admission to us that you intentionally tried to kill him, the prosecutor let you plead to third-degree murder rather than first-degree murder, correct? Correct. In third-degree murder, the penalty maximum is 10 to 20 years in prison, correct? Correct. And so for taking the hitman with you, giving him a gun, driving him there, setting him up, recruiting him, you're only facing, in that case, 10 to 20 years, correct? I'm not sure. Well, third-degree murder is 10 to 20. Mr. Witherall, that's not true, Your Honor. Mr. Goldman says it is. Overruled. The question is third-degree murder 10 to 20 years? Do you know that? The witness, yes. Next question. Thank you. That's a pretty sweet deal, isn't it? I believe so, yeah. Yeah, and you expect, when it comes to the guy that you gunned down in the street, that what you're going to plead guilty to and you pump bullets into him, you expect you're going to get third-degree murder in that case also, don't you? I don't know, I just pled guilty. Pardon me? I don't know. I just pled guilty to my actions. You pled guilty to your actions? Right. So are you telling us right now that you don't know whether or not that was a plea to first-degree murder or third-degree murder? Yeah, I'm not sure. In any event, from what we have here, on kind of like what's on your platter, Robbie Johnson murder, you could have gotten mandatory life. They let you plead to third-degree murder. The victim with the first name Andre, what you say is an intentional killing, you're not exactly sure what they're going to give you, correct? Correct. Do you remember the homicide detective sat down with you in July of 2017? Yeah. He told you that he had 2 other bodies on you. Do you know what that means? That you killed 2 other people. Objection overruled. Do you remember that? Yeah. Something about killing 2 people at a trap house. What's a trap house? A house where people sell drugs out. On Prod Street? Do I have it right or wrong? Wrong. What's the name of the street? Pratt. Crack Street? Pratt. Crack? Pratt. P. I'm sorry, Pratt Street. Okay, do you intend on pleading guilty to these? I'm not charged with those. Pardon me? I'm not charged with those homicides. Not yet. Mr. Witherall, objection. You can bring it out on redirect, overruled. Okay. Up until now, the plea that was taken proudly in this courtroom and your decision, you decided to cooperate in this case in October of this year, correct? Just recently? Correct. In addition to the state murder cases, you were charged out of the October 19, 2017 sale of a gun and crack cocaine to the CH that we heard on the video yesterday, correct? Correct. And in that case, you know you could get, just for this case, for that case alone, 15 years in federal jail, correct? I ain't sure, I don't know. Well, we'll go over it in the transcripts then. The detective told you that, the detective told you that, and the agent told you that. Did they not? Did they not? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry, I don't understand. I did not hear you. Okay, I'll come around it in a different way then. So in this meeting, and if you don't recall it, I'll be glad to go. We have a transcript of the discussions at a meeting with Special Agent Simpson. And yesterday, there was a task force officer that I asked his age of, Gary Stevens. He was at that. We have a transcript of it. So anything that you don't remember, I'll be glad to pull the transcript and see if I can refresh your recollection, okay? Do you remember the officers tried to get you to flip to cooperate back in July of 2018? You got a transcript? I'm sorry. Do you have transcripts? I sure do. Can you read it to me? It's 30 pages. He said, oh, well, I don't remember. Okay. Do you remember that in trying to get you to flip, that they told you that in regards to just the gun and drug case alone, the federal case, and this is a quote, them saying this to you, the gun itself can give you 15 years in federal prison, and that's just for one gun. Do you remember that? Yeah. Okay. Do you remember them saying that, in fact, we've got another gun on you in this case, and you can get 15 years for that also? Do you remember that? Yeah. And then the quote on the transcripts that they said to you is, there's a second gun involved in this case. The gun on you when the cops chased you into the house. Mr. Witherall, could I just ask for a page number of the transcript? Page 8, transcript, July 26, 2018. Do you have the bait stamp, please? No, I don't. I can take the time to get it. Ask your next question. And the agent and the police officers, in trying to get you to cooperate with them, says the gun matches the murder, and that the gun could get you 15 years. Do you remember that? Not them words. I don't remember that. Do you want me to read it, or words to that effect? Do you remember them telling you you could get 15 years on each gun? Correct? Correct about what? That I can get 15 years for each gun? When they're trying to get you to flip, they're outlining what you're facing. That's what I'm going over right now. Yeah. They told you you could get 15 years on each gun, correct? Yeah. And then they talked to you about Robbie Johnson's murder, and they said that you are charged in the state with that and you're facing life imprisonment. Their quote in what they said to you is, life in the state is life. Do you remember that? Yeah. And they continued. They told you they also knew that you were involved in a shootout inside of a trap house on Pratt Street. That murder. And they told you your DNA will match from the shootout on Pratt Street. Do you remember that? Yeah, I remember. And they then said to you, you have one homicide charge, which is the Johnson murder. And that homicide detective says, I know about the other two. Do you remember that? Yeah. Do you remember him saying to you, I'm telling you, if you get convicted of Robbie Johnson's murder, you're going to get life. Do you remember that? Yeah. But you're only getting 10 to 20 now, correct? Objection, incorrect. I just want to be clear, that's not the law in Pennsylvania. Murder 3 is not 10 to 20. He says, what is it? It's 20 to 40. For purposes of this, cross-examine the witness. Go ahead. You have redirect, Mr. Goldman. Do you remember the agents then saying to you, there's wiggle room here if you cooperate in the federal system? Do you remember that? Yeah. Do you remember the agent saying to you, there's a possibility if you cooperate, all will be lumped together in the federal system? Do you remember that? Yeah. Go to page 11 of the transcript. Okay. He says, and this is coming from Agent Simpson, the other thing, too. Man, is that it's not too often that you get a prosecutor on our side, the federal side, and a prosecutor is like in your murder case. That's the state case. They're willing to work together, and they're willing to make this work for you. It continues 2 lines down. But the fact is that everybody is willing to bring this in our federal, our federal case, let you help yourself on it, and let you get from under that life in prison. Do you remember him telling you that? Yeah. Do you remember Task Force Officer Gary Stevens? How old are you now? 32? Yeah. Do you remember Officer Gary Stevens says, if you cooperate, you'll be my age when you get out? Do you remember that? Yeah. Agent Stevens says he's 42 yesterday. Agent Stevens says you'll get out when you're his age. You acknowledge that, correct? I ain't sure. You remember him saying that. You cooperate, you'll be out by my age. Do you remember that? That was his words? Yeah, I just read it. I don't remember him saying that, but if it's in the transcript, evidently that's what he said. There's a Philadelphia homicide detective there on page 16. He says to you, the ultimate goal for you is how can I do as little time in prison as possible? All right, that's the opportunity we're presenting to you. Do you remember the Philly homicide guy saying that to you? I remember the Philly homicide, but I don't remember him saying it to me. If it's in the transcript, I'm telling you it's in the transcript. If it's not, the prosecutor will correct me. Do you accept that? Do you want to see it? No, I don't want to see it. So you didn't decide to flip back there in July of 2018, but you did just about a month ago. And you are now looking at a lot of time before Judge Bailson, correct? Correct. Now you entered what's called a cooperation agreement with the government, did you not? Correct. Who is it that has the power to recommend to the judge that you will get below what the sentencing guidelines is? The government. That right now you're facing some serious time, but they, in your plea agreement, they are the ones, in their sole discretion, that can recommend to Judge Bailson either that he comes below the guidelines or if he comes below any mandatory minimum. You're aware of that, aren't you? Yeah. Now, do you remember, say, what drug deals you did on the first week of October? What year? I'm sorry, of 2017. I don't remember that far back of every drug deal I made. Okay. And so, if I went over any dates, you say you met with my client. Do you know any dates that you met with my client? No, I don't know what dates. And this is during the period of time where we talked lengthily yesterday that you're smoking blunts 20, 30 times a day, correct? Correct. Now, do you remember telling the agents that the first time you met Mr. West, you wanted to shoot him? You wanted to kill him? Do you remember saying that? Yeah. Because you didn't like what he was saying, correct? Correct. The agents told you back in July of 2018, did you know that Mr. West put out a rap video where he has publicly stated that you killed Robbie Johnson? Do you remember the agents telling you that? Yeah. You didn't know until they told you that, right? He said no. So we know that when you don't like what Mr. West was saying when you first met him, and that was enough for you to want to kill him, he's now talking trash about you, and he's telling the world that you're committed to a murder, correct? Incorrect. He's not telling the world that you were involved in a murder by singing or a public song about Taz going out and killing someone. You said talking trash. That would be more bragging, giving somebody props on what they're doing. You didn't mind him telling publicly that, you were involved in a murder. It's not that I didn't mind. Why would you go tell somebody in your raps that a person that you deal with just committed a murder for you or just committed a murder, period? Exactly. And that kind of upset you, didn't it? I mean, I didn't feel any type of way at the time. I'm sorry? I didn't feel any type of way at the time because I didn't know how to take it. You didn't know how to take the fact that he was singing public songs about you killing someone. I didn't know how to take it. I didn't have any feelings on how I felt about it at the time. About it. How do you feel about it now? Like, why would you do that? Was that worse than what he was saying to you when he wanted to kill him back in 2016? Whatever he said to you back in 2016, telling people that you committed a murder publicly, that's even worse than what he said to you back in 2016, correct? Incorrect. You said 2016. Whenever, 15, 16, 17, when is it you wanted to kill Mr. West? When I first met him, 2010. What year? 2010. 2010? Uh-huh. Okay. It's quoted in an FBI report about that 2010 that you, quote, wanted to shoot the shit out of him because his big mouth. Do you remember that? Yeah, I remember. You're not supposed to lie anyway. That's part of your plea agreement, is it not? Yeah. And Mr. Witherall asked you, the prosecutor asked you yesterday, did you see the guns around the mansion with the people of the mansion? And you told the jury, yeah, everybody had weapons. Remember that? Yeah. Well, that's a lie, isn't it? No. Hans Gadsden, you never saw him with a gun, did you? No. So telling the jury yesterday that everybody at the mansion, and you told us that Mr. Gadsden himself was at the mansion, that everybody had guns, would be a lie that you stated yesterday. And you say, yeah, everybody there had weapons, okay? Yeah. You agree with that? Yeah. That's a lie. Is it not? Because my client, you never saw him once in your life with a weapon, correct? Correct. But I never saw him at the mansion all the time. He might be outside of the mansion. Being inside the mansion is different from being outside. Let me develop that. So are you saying that my client was not a regular person at the mansion when you were there? Right. And you, in fact, use the terms that in taking to the prosecutor and talking to the prosecutor, allegations of violence here, that my client was, excuse the expression, it's yours, was soft as duck shit. You said that, did you not? Correct. So from your observations, now we know from my client, Mr. Gadsden, we know that he was not a regular person when you were there, going to the mansion, number one, correct? Correct. You never saw him with a weapon, correct? Correct. And a man like you, and what we know about you, consider him to be soft. Is that correct? Correct. And to make it clear, you said yesterday he had no idea that Robbie Johnson was going to be murdered, correct? Correct. Now you're getting weed from the mansion also, were you not? Yeah. Now let me ask just a few more questions, and we're getting towards the end of this. In the plea agreement, it provides that if you provide any untruthful testimony, they wrote this, that they can pull this plea agreement away from you. Do you know that? Yeah. So the government could pull this plea agreement away from you for saying, if they believe that your testimony was untruthful about my client yesterday. Do you understand that? Yeah. Do you remember back in July of 2017, Agent Simpson and Task Force Officer Stevens asked you about meth dealing, and you told them, I ain't never sell no meth. Remember telling them that? Yeah. Now, we know from yesterday that as recent as October 19, 2017, which would be about 7 months before this interview, you sold meth to the cooperating individual. We heard the tapes yesterday. Do you remember that? I remember. So you telling the agents, I ain't never sell no meth, is a lie, is it not? Incorrect. See, this is where you get wrong. That I never sold meth before. That's what I said. That was my first time selling it. First time ever selling meth was to the CI. Mr. Stewart, in that interview, it was never brought up, that incident. It was never discussed in that 30 pages anything about that meth sale. That didn't come up. The only question put to you was, have you ever sold meth? And you stated to them, I ain't never sell meth, okay? In that interview, you also say, and I'll go to the transcript if you want, that I wouldn't even know anybody that would buy meth. Do you remember that? I remember. But you did know somebody. You knew that the cooperator whose name didn't come up during this interview. Blindside is his code name. You know Blindside would buy meth. As a matter of fact, in the transcript we heard yesterday, Blindside's telling you, hey, I want to get some meth from you. I want to get some more meth from you. You go, okay? I'll get you some. Remember that? I remember. So it was a lie when you said you ain't never sell meth, correct? It wasn't no lie. Okay, back in the same interview, they said, we're going to ask you a question, and we'll be gauged by your answer. Who was the other person you were with when Robbie was killed? It's the agent saying to you, Now's your time. You tell us who you were with. What's his name when Robbie Johnson was murdered? Do you remember that? You got the transcript. Read it. Do you know the answer? Do you remember it? I don't remember. I don't know the bull's name. That was a lie, wasn't it? Yeah, that whole interview was. So you were prepared to lie during however long it takes to do a 30-page interview to the FBI, to homicide detectives in Philadelphia, to task force officers, to protect yourself. Is that correct? You just said, let him answer the question. He said, yeah. Can I say this? When I gave that interview, when I first got arrested or recharged for the federal drug indictment, but it was questions from homicide. Yeah, I was trying to cover my ass and cover the dudes I was dealing with asses. But after everything came out, I'm going to trial with a public defender fighting for my life, and I'm with these dudes and there's no help in my favor. Why fall and do life for these guys that wanted to get me murdered? So what I'm hearing from that, and see if it's correct, what you're saying is you're prepared to lie to help yourself, correct? No. Lie to protect yourself. No. Okay, let's keep going down. Didn't you just say in the beginning of all that, yeah, all that was lies? That's because at that point in time, you didn't want to do the time that they were telling you that you were facing, correct? It wasn't like I didn't want to do the time. I was trying to cover me and my so-called homies' tracks. Let's take your homies out of this. So now you're telling us that you were prepared to lie to protect your tracks, correct? I'm not going to say correct on something I don't agree to. So you're saying today the only reason you did this was to protect others and not you. Is that what you're saying? I don't understand your question, what you're asking me. Now, even though they said that you were going to gauge, even though they said that they were going to gauge you and what happens by your answer to that question, you still got third-degree murder in the Robbie Johnson case and not life in prison. Do you remember yesterday you said you made a telephone call to Robbie on the day of the murder to set this up, to get some glass from him? Do you remember that? Yeah. Do you remember back in July 26 of 2018, you told them that when Johnson gave you glass, you were confused because you thought you were supposed to get some coke from him? Do you remember telling him that? Yeah. That was a lie, was it not? No. What? No, glass. I don't know what glass was. I'm thinking I'm getting crack cocaine from him. I didn't know glass was meth. Well, if you were confused because you were telling the agents you expected to get some coke, but you got glass instead. But you got instead glass, correct? Incorrect. I told the agents I thought I was going to get crack, not no glass. I didn't know what glass was, which is meth. I didn't know what the meaning of meth is called, glass. Well, you were a regular attendee at the mansion over all the time that you weren't in prison. So if you're telling us that you didn't know what glass was, then I guess you never heard from any of our clients use the word glass. Is that correct? No. Well, then you didn't know what glass was. No, I didn't. Could you help me understand that? What you mean? Listen, you're a man of the street, are you not? Yeah. And being a man of the street, you know what stuff's called. Like you called marijuana leaves, correct? Who called marijuana leaf? I saw it in one of your interviews. Leaf, no. Called marijuana weed, loud gas. I never dealt with meth, so I don't know the term of meth is called glass. I didn't know that term. But yesterday you testified and you just acknowledged that you called Robbie Johnson and you said to Robbie Johnson, I'm going to come over to get some glass. You used the word yourself. Afterwards, I found out what it was. So you're telling us that you had no idea when you're setting up this homicide and asking him to give you glass that it was methamphetamine. Right. I October 2nd, 2019, just recently, in an interview with one of the FBI agents, they spoke to you, and you said you drove back to the apartment where you picked up your 9 cig and called Johnson to get some glass. Let's keep going. You said that, did you not? You got to repeat the whole question over. One of those agents wrote that you said to them, you drove back to your apartment, you picked up your 9 cig. By the way, that's a weapon? Yes. Semi-automatic weapon. Yeah. And called Johnson to get some glass, right? Right. And now you're telling us that even though you're setting up a murder and you're setting it up for Johnson to get you glass, wouldn't you agree with me that you must know that Johnson was a glass dealer or supplier? I didn't know that neither. Well, you certainly expected him to give you glass, right? To front you glass? You testified to it yesterday. Yeah, absolutely. And only 4 days later, you met with a confidential informant who says that, you know, he wants to buy meth. And you take him this glass that you got from Johnson, correct? Correct. Mr. Stewart, isn't it correct that what you're doing here the past 2 days is you're trying to get back the deals that the agents and police officers offered you back in July of 2018? So you're asking me what I'm doing today, sitting on the stand, is cooperating because of the deal the agents and the DA said what the judge is supposed to be sentencing me? No, I'm cooperating on my own free will because dudes that I was involved with backdoored me and didn't have my back, and they let me fall and wanted me to fall. Man, for some stuff that I did on behalf from an order from Abdul West. And what got me on the stand today cooperating is because of the accusations that Abdul West was saying to other people in jails. So the dude, Robbie Johnson, that I allegedly killed, was supposed to kill me, and it all comes out. The truth comes out. So this is why I'm here today for the courtroom testifying on my behalf. Because you want to get even with him? So the court says let him finish. No, it's not getting even. I'm not getting even. I feel betrayed like they feel betrayed. I feel wrong for, taking a life, but, us as street guys, if somebody was to kill one of y'all siblings or y'all brothers, the first thing on your mind is revenge. However it comes, whether it's justice or whether it's from your own hands, yeah, I'm guilty of the charge of killing Andre Moore. He shot my brother in the head. There's 3 other people. I don't got nothing to do with that. You talking about what I am charged with today. So, okay, you asked about Robbie Johnson. The hit came from Abdul West. For whatever selfish reasons he wanted to kill me, or kill him, I carried it out. Why? Because I was considered and looked at as a member of OBH. For whatever selfish reasons, you decided to take this young man's life away. Isn't that correct? Let's keep going. What young man? For your own selfish reasons, you took the life of Robbie Johnson, correct? Incorrect. Not for my selfish reasons, for that man's selfish reasons. So there was nothing in it for you. You just did it with nothing to gain. Really? You just kill people for no reason? I don't run around the city killing people like I'm a mass murderer, serial killer, or hitman. 4 bodies? Got objected. Now, this is, actually, you know what? I'm going to stop it here. I'll get into the next one on the next video, the redirect. But this is as far as it went during this whole,
What's good, man? So 6ix9ine running around telling everybody that Jim Jones is really your informant, and he the one that took down the 9 Trey Bloods. You know what I'm saying? He really got this in his heart that Jimmy was the informant. You know what I'm saying? So 50 Cent is getting all his information from 6ix9ine the rat. You know what I'm saying? He told him that Jimmy is a rat too.